Access granted. Welcome to the Bunker Codes podcast. Nothing here is medical, dental, vision, legal, or financial advice. We're all on the same team, wishing for peaceful resolution where everyone can get along and be left alone. Enjoy your stay. Bye.
Welcome back, everyone, to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen. This is episode I have no idea of the Bunker Codes podcast. It has been a long time. You'll notice my voice sounds different, the background sounds different. It's because I've moved after over 5 years of challenges and trials and tribulations. I've moved. Don't know how don't know how long this podcast is going to be. It's going to be weird and hard and kind of like a challenge finding my groove again. I can't exactly remember, and I didn't really necessarily go back and look to see what my topics were before I left. I know I ended it on a kind of a positive, helpful note. I remember now, my sinus is always crud up the second I start trying to do a podcast. So yeah, let's just take a break for a quick second. On the surface, this episode might seem like me just complaining. And to be clear, I have a lot to be thankful for. Like, I'm alive. You know, nobody dramatically hurt themselves during the various moves that we had to do. I have a beautiful view of just a solid wall of trees, which is all I've really ever dreamed of, you know. And there's going to be like a couple topics. I don't have notes. I didn't even write down the order that I want to talk all this in. So it's going to be kind of like a free thought. I also don't know how much background noise this mic's going to pick up. I know it's going to sound echoey. There's still not a lot of stuff in this room. The air just turned off. I don't know how much it's going to pick up the air. I have a lot to be thankful for. I have some more garden stuff I have to move, but besides that, like 99% moved. Today will be officially a week of actually having everything in the house. And kind of the first thing I want to talk about is there's an intense emotional impact that happens when you move. Very similar to what I would say like a shit is the fan situation, where you've kind of got, or camping or whatever, where you've got kind of the honeymoon period, which I equate to like the feeling like you're on vacation, that 2 to 3 day period before the routine, no matter how beautiful, of a place you're in, like routine sets in. Like, to me, the perfect vacation time is like 3 days, 2 nights. It's like just enough so you don't have to rush everything, and enough to where if there's something you really liked to do, you can go do it a second time. But like when you move, and especially how we moved, where the move was a giant uncertainty wrapped in a million smaller uncertainties, it was really hard to feel any sense of relief, because it was a giant marathon and just, trying not to get hurt. Example, like, And that's the one thing we've noticed from all this. The longer you work, like a timer just starts of like how long before you get hurt. And as soon as you get hurt, then you know that your work is over for the day. Because you're not working with any sense of structure. You're just trying to literally get done as much as you can. Not even before nightfall, just like before you're exhausted. So like there's a million bees nests here, which creates quite a distraction, I think. They're not the kind of bees, they make the paper kind of honeycomb balls, paper balls. There's seriously one like every 5 feet. Every time you turn around, there's another one. And even though I feel like I got them all, I still see them coming up and taking off from the house. And I'm still no closer to even finding out what they eat, where they're eating, or anything. We've gone through like 6-7 cans of bug spray trying to kill them all. And so like last night, and they're in areas that are almost impossible to get to. And so, which they seem to do on purpose. So you have to spray them often at very, very sharp angles, which just increases the likelihood of not if, but when the wasp spray is just going to splat right back in your face. Because it foams, which is good. But sooner or later, that foam is going to blast right back in your face. Again, public service reminder that wasp spray is not a defensive spray. There's many YouTube videos that have debunked this. I already blasted myself in the face twice with wasp spray this week. It didn't do anything to me. Just because I've had there has to have been like 15 or 20 wasp nests on it. And one just flew by. I think there was like 15 wasp nests on the house. Wasp spray is not a defensive spray. I get absolutely furious when people suggest that it is. It's not. That whoever started that has probably got people killed. And other YouTubers get extremely frustrated when they see shit that just is going to get people killed. Yeah, the wasp spray defensive thing is absolutely infuriating. Get real, get a real can of real pepper spray if you're going to trust your life to it, idiots. So, not you, the people who keep saying that. Anyway, so going off on a tangent. I've been saying for a long time that we were going to have to move. That's because my roommate has been telling us for years that we were going to have to move. But I think he just liked to, romanticize about moving, from just an overindulgence of home renovation shows. And I knew he had no intention of actually moving. I think it just made him feel good to talk about it, which is fine, but unfortunately you're affecting other people's lives. And the last 2, 3, 4 years just haven't been good for moving. Houses, but before the Rona, when Mr. 45 was reaching kind of the pinnacle of him being in office, everybody got houses again right as we were losing ours, and house prices doubled. And we still had a bankruptcy in our name. and we were trying to build our credit back. Houses doubling is not the end of the world. Then the Rona happened, and houses prices actually went down a little bit. And that's probably when we should have bought. There was kind of a sweet spot there where like nobody was buying and you could get a house. One of my friends bought one. I thought he was really stupid at first. But then it ended up, he was the only person I knew that bought a house at that sweet spot. I'm like, man, you're dumb. Like $200,000 for a house, man. Like, that's insane. You like way overpaid. $225 or something. Like, you way overpaid. And then the Rona went in full swing and houses tripled, and then they started going for 50 over in cash. And at that point I knew there. Oh, and then the eviction ban happened, for a solid, I don't know, year and a half or something. And there was no way you were buying a house then. And then the eviction bans finally lifted. And, you had BlackRock, etc., buying, every house for $50,000 up in cash for a year. It was just impossible to buy a house. So that was 2022. So fast forward to 2023. Then you have interest rates going through the roof. It's kind of compensating the house prices going down. So what ended up happening was you're trying to buy a house. They're valuing the house based on $50,000 over in cash, saying, well, the last 3 houses sold for this much. And you're like, well, that's not value. Those are just inflated prices. But they work for the banks. They basically are the banks. And they can sell a price for 3 times what it would cost new. And they can get away with it with total impunity, even when their own math doesn't work. So the house that we got, it was assessed at least $30,000 over, just in pure math, inaccurate, very, very simple, basic math. And the lender didn't care. I did a math breakdown for him, and I sent the math back to him, and he didn't even respond to my email that they had assessed this place, not just in math, like 30,000 over. And they don't care. And also, suspiciously, the person that assessed the house magically assessed it at exactly the same price that the people were selling it. But they have to sign a thing saying that they're not in cahoots, but they magically, within $1,000, magically both arrived at exactly the same price, which is statistically impossible, I might add. And then when you factor in, well, that's a bumblebee. I think now that I've chased most of the wasps away, the bumblebees are starting to come back. So we got screwed that way. And I wanted the sellers to make some money, but the sellers were like 80,000 up, and they hadn't done any like maintenance on this house. And I don't think they deserved to be 80,000 up, or 70, or 60, or 50, or 40. If they wanted to be somewhere between like 20 and 30,000 up, I think we could have met in the middle, and I would have been a lot happier. But they were insanely greedy, first of all. Second of all, the lenders conveniently liked to wait until our closing dates to tell us that our loans were falling through. And they did this 3 times. Our closing date got extended like 4 times, 3 of those times they changed the loan on us on the last day every single time. Again, I think that coincidences do exist, but 3 times in a row with exactly the same, it's a scam. So we have the scam of paying like way over from the bank assessor who didn't even have the right roof on his paperwork, which to me is fraud, is massive fraud. He included a bunch of appliances that weren't coming with the house. He included a bunch of appliances that were damaged to the point of not being operable. And he assessed the house based on all those things. So among just his math, he assessed it based on a roof that was the wrong roof, a bunch of appliances we weren't getting, a shed that basically needs to be demoed. It's just amazing. So none of this is to deter you from buying a house, because there's some other things that we did get that don't make it advantageous, but at least sort of break even the pros with the cons. But suffice it to say, we got scammed two different ways. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends, so-called friends, that should have been more supportive, instead I kind of feel like they were gaslighting me a little bit, going like, well, at least you had the money, or at least you had a buffer, at least you had this, at least you had that. It's like, yeah, but that's like breaking down in the middle of nowhere and being able to walk to a gas station and the gas station attendant going, well, at least you have legs. But they also have legs. And it's like, dude, you have legs too. We both have legs. Like, can we go get my car now? You have a tow truck. So I'm noticing just more and more and more total apathy for like other people's the amount of scamming, not other people's problems, the amount of scamming going on. I've talked to a ton of people about this. It seems like there's basically every single transaction has like a scam layer applied to it. And the more you think about it, the more you realize that so it's just whether intentional or not. So, we had to get our pharmacy thing moved, and we pay, you do the insurance thing. They figure out the prices, you buy it. So like we bought our medication at the new pharmacy, and the receipt printed out, and they didn't hand us the medicine. And then that gal leaves for some reason to go talk to somebody. She doesn't say anything, she just walks off. A new gal comes up to the cash register, rings up our meds, which first of all come to a completely different price for some reason. And then she tells us to pay, and we go, no, we've already paid. And by the way, like, the receipt is still, in the little receipt printer. It hasn't been torn off and handed to us yet. So it's like, it's still there. You can see that we still paid for those things. She goes, no, you didn't. You didn't pay for this stuff. And we're like, we held the receipt up and showed her, and it was still in her register machine. Then she tore off the receipt and took it, and still wouldn't give us our meds. And it's like, maybe it wasn't intentional. It wasn't intentional. Probably a mistake. It was probably an accident. But like, this is this is like an everyday, this seems to be just like an everyday occurrence. And I was trying to make a joke at the grocery store about like, oh wow, at least my groceries aren't $300 today. And like, there wasn't even like a reaction from anybody. And maybe they're all just like beat up or whatever, but I expected like some kind of reaction. Where I'm from, you'd say something like that and everybody would crack up. But here, you talk about food prices and everybody just shuts up. It's really bizarre. And I don't know what passes as humorous or sarcastic around here, but I don't know. I feel like in some ways it's odd. I feel like food prices are actually more affordable here, which I don't know how that's possible in some grocery stores anyway. But the gas is just outrageous. You can have two gas stations next to each other that are like 60 cents difference, and I just don't know how. I don't know how that's reconciled. So the other day, one of the gas stations had to close for some inspections, and across the street, I had to go to the gas station. It was 60 more cents a gallon. And all I could think to myself is like, what stops the more expensive gas station from like sabotaging the less expensive gas station? Because why would anyone pay 60 more cents a gallon per gas? 60 cents a gallon, which is, I don't care if gas is $2 or $6 a gallon. Like an extra 60 cents a gallon is robbery as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know. I don't know where to leave that off, but suffice it to say, we're now in a house in the middle of nowhere, and we have 99% of our stuff, and not to complain, definitely not e-begging or anything, but it completely drained our bank account because the lender conveniently kept jacking up our prices until it conveniently basically used up our entire bank account. So yeah, that's a thing that happened. That used up all of our fund. That fund was set aside because we knew this house was going to need a lot of repairs. You know, it's a 30-year-old house, and we knew that they hadn't been taking care of it. So we knew it was going to need a lot of repairs. And instead, you know, they changed our loan over and over and over and over until we had to use up our entire amount of funds that we'd set aside for repairs. So now we went from basically this house was just going to be like a total banger, brought up to speed in pretty much like every capacity. We went from that to like asking for help and just like kind of barely shoring the house up in bits and pieces. It was a real bummer. So it's going to be years of us limping along to try to get this place to where it'll last. I want the house to last like 20 years while we save up to hopefully be able to just drop a new house on it. So, and wait for interest rates to go down and then refi. And it's just kind of crazy. But I guess again, similar positives like it's crazy quiet, which I love. Great neighbors. I wanted to be helping them work on their stuff today, but they've got enough help, and I'm just like, I have to like take so like I remember I had to like jump off a ladder yesterday because my foot slipped because I was spraying wasp nests and my foot slipped and I jumped, but I didn't realize I was jumping from halfway up the ladder. And so I landed, and actually I thought I landed okay, but obviously like when you land your weight keeps going, and my weight kind of just pulled me to the ground. And then I rolled because my, ninja reflexes, and I rolled onto my back and my back went pop. And I was actually fine, which is just a miracle. Shout outs to like making sure your ladder, if you do fall, that you're not landing on, rebar or, railroad spikes or something. Yeah, the ground here is hard, but again, total miracle. So I'm like, I want to help them, but I also need to take a day for myself. And Friday night, Saturday morning was the first time that I'd felt what I would consider normal. Not even normal, but actually felt like doing stuff in months and months and months, because we've been in this kind of like soft moving mode for so long. We started moving out like in March. It was kind of soft moving out, so we'd be ready, which ended up being an amazing move to do. Not everybody can do that though, but we did, so I haven't had a lot of my goodies that I like to keep around me since like March. So having all my stuff back, and yeah, that's been huge. And like work was really weird. Like getting motivated to like really dig in on stuff has been really hard, because there's kind of like sort of like a survival mode that you get into and before like burnout. And I've just been like, and then like, just pure like sleep deprivation. Well, I've been cycling between like survival mode, burnout, and sleep, like absolute sleep deprivation for so long that I wasn't sure I was ever going to come back out of it or not. And then when I finally did, yeah, it was like a big cloud had lifted, and actually feel like doing things again because you want to, not because you have to. And then, yeah, last night was kind of like the first, oh, yay, I'm back to thinking about work before I fall asleep again. It's like, does that mean I'm back in burnout mode, or is survival mode higher or lower than burnout mode? And I wanted to go log in at 1 in the morning and start working. Which some people would maybe see that as an improvement, and other people might see that as a negative. But I've been, my like emotions and my brain have just been like all over the place. So I guess, the whole 1 a.m. worrying about work thing, I kind of see that as a positive. And then also I was really relieved that it was Sunday. But yeah, I'd had some kind of weird bad dream that I was getting in trouble with work for not showing up to work. But yeah, today is definitely a Sunday, so I don't have to. But yeah, I think I dreamed today was Monday, that I was late for work. Or no, now that I was late, I didn't even show up. Anyway, so to have just like a whole day. But the thing is, like, I really don't have the whole day free because there's actually, just a million, it feels like a million boxes that I have to go through. It's going to be hot though. But another thing, I guess, like, pretty soon we'll start with the segment that I always do of what if I'm wrong. So it's a couple degrees cooler here. There's no smoke or smog or no fires in the distance that I have to worry about. A fire coming. I don't have any of that to worry about. And kind of one of my first like aha moments was going back into town. And then I get out of the car and I took a deep breath and I couldn't breathe, and I looked and there was like the wall, the telltale wall of smoke and fire, and you just couldn't breathe. And it's like this haze that like burns the back of your eyes with the way the sun is like manipulated and changed and mutated by the smog in the air. And I thought about it for a second and I'm like, you know what? Fuck this place. I never want to deal with this again. I never want to deal with these damn fires. This smoke, this smog that everybody has just like learned to live with. And even though crossing my fingers that like the fire season's almost over, but like never having to worry about another fire season ever again. You can't, and that just being like my biggest terror, like fear for so many years now. Just this crippling, I don't know, 5 years maybe, but just this crippling fear of like forest fires. You might go, oh, well, you live in a forest now. I'm like, I do, but suspiciously, and we've talked about this on the channel before, suspiciously, the fires were starting in the same place. I'm adjusting my mic, try to get situated here. I told myself I was going to get a new mic, remember, but there's no way that's going to happen now because we're pretty much broke. And we will be for a long time, but not e-begging, just kind of trying to get everyone up to speed. So why I'm not doing a lot of the things that I said I was going to do when I moved. So suspiciously, the fires were being started in the same locations every year. Suspiciously, every single time it was when the wind was going into town. And again, like the first couple times, it was an accident. The first couple times, and then maybe there were accidents. Third, fourth, fifth time of the fires being started, every time the wind just happened to be changing direction into the city, towards the city. Like sooner or later, it's just going to seem like they're trying to burn people out of their houses and towns, that didn't comply with either, the lockdowns or the mandates or whatever. And I remember we were talking about this in the chat a month or so ago, and then somebody else brought up like the train wrecks. And so it's like, yeah, if you don't comply, they burn you out or they just wreck a train in your town. And you might say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That's fair. Well, like, sure, the first couple times, but like after a while, it just becomes a process. And people might go, oh, well, trains trains wreck all the time. Well, maybe they do, but like in towns with hazardous materials, like, oh, forests burn down all the time. Yeah, really? But like every time the wind just happens to be going, directly towards the town, like it's no, I'm not buying it, and I'm never gonna buy it. Like, this is the same thing they did with the Rona, with presidents that wouldn't mandate, the shots. And then now all those presidents got removed. And it just feels like it's, every restaurant that didn't close down got shot up or burned down. That they didn't take the knee. And then now, the towns, they couldn't attack the towns, and so now they're burning them out and wrecking trains in them. And you can't convince me anymore. It's happened so many times. You can't convince me of that. So not having to live in fear of your town burning down is very nice. That could eventually come here, but I think the climate would have to change quite a bit more for us to be a risk. And so for now, we're many, 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 many miles away from those forest fires and the smog. We're not in the floodplains either. So really happy about that. And I know, you might be sitting there in the comments, nowhere is really safe. And that's true. You're right. But there's a difference between nowhere being safe and living in the direct path of forest fires that happen to conveniently be starting at the same time every year when the wind is going the exact direction that it has to burn out the town. And meanwhile, they're, destroying fire stations and inundating the fire stations with fentanyl calls and AMR, or is it code zero, for huge chunks of the day. And, the police have been defunded and, fired, and they're on stand downs with street takedowns and stuff. Like the whole, so yeah. I think that may have sounded like a lot of a word salad, but we'll take a quick break, a quick commercial break from our to our sponsors. Raid Shadow, Raycons. And I'm gonna go fill up my cup of coffee, and then we'll go into the what if I'm wrong segment, and then try to remember what the other thing I wanted to talk about was. So I'll be back. All right, we are back. Thank you for the sponsor. Today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Raycons. Use the 10% off code to get gold-plated abs in your game. That's like an NFT that is almost like having real gold, sort of. So that's fun. Let's see. What if I'm wrong? This is the what if I'm wrong segment. Not to mention all the fire stuff. I'm not wrong about that. That's happened a ton of times. What if I'm wrong and everything actually ends up being okay? So let's pretend. Let's pretend some. I don't know. Are we going to pretend that the street races just stop? Sorry, I'm like tightening up my. I promised I was going to set my microphone on the other side, or on something that wasn't just plastic and metal, and I didn't do it. I got to do it. I'll do it later. So well, yes. I don't think he there's a live studio chat. I don't think he just supports them. I think he does a lot more than that. Yeah, that's a whole. I think he's directly involved in that whole cabal. So we'll take street racers for example. Like street racing, street lockdowns aren't just going to go away. So, well, yes, there you go. I agree. So, someone put out an interesting anecdote the other day. They're talking about how when they're providing an eviction notice, they'll bring armored cars and SWAT trucks and stuff now just to serve an eviction notice. But there'll be massive street racer lockdowns. And they don't send any cops at all. But they'll fly, a helicopter around, and the helicopter will be having fireworks and lasers shot at it. And they don't do anything about it. And so what if I'm wrong? What, the street racers just decide to stop? I don't think that's ever going to happen. The cops actually going after the street racers, I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I don't know. That might not be a good example. What's an example? Food prices. Do you think food prices are actually going to go down? When have food prices ever gone down? I'm not sure that that's ever happened. It's, not rice. Yeah, street racers are going to do whatever they do and they're going to ignore the rules. Yeah, they've and the thing is they've always been around. Even when I was a kid, there was huge street rallies every Friday night, Saturday night with, a lot of illegal car stuff. The difference now is that the shutdowns they do are just massive. And now and they're never going to get bored. And so the culture has been thriving forever. So they're not just going to go away unless someone makes them go away. And if anything, the defunding the police thing is and the stand down's been going worse. They generally go, food generally goes up, man-made scarcity, even though we know America alone hoards the majority of the world's food. Yeah, except for rice, which India hoards the majority of the world's food. Rice supply, because the rice paddies in the United States don't grow very well. Although the U.S. doesn't eat the majority of the world's rice either. I should probably work that into my books at some point, India becoming just a financial powerhouse over the amount of rice output. They could control large volumes of the world's food economy just by controlling rice outputs, and probably force a war over resources. Yeah, it's not a part of our diet as much, so it doesn't affect us, but it will eventually. We do store a ton of food we've imported. You're right. And probably in a bunker in a mountain somewhere for the richy riches. Which is funny because there's still grain silos everywhere. You'd think that they would build new grain silos and try to store more food, but even if they did, they would never strategically release the food unless they were going to tie it to the digital currency and be okay, we've stored up all this food and you can have access to this food if you switch over to the digital currency, which we're super close to it starting to roll out and be tested. I don't think I'm wrong about that. It's in testing right now. That's kind of just a matter of when. So food scarcity is definitely going to go up. So I can't really be wrong about that. Which is why I'm going to be growing as much food as I can. I just need a couple more planter boxes and a shovel. I left all my shovels with my roommates. That was dumb. Gonna need a new shovel. So what, I mean, like, what else? Like fuel? Do you think fuel prices are gonna go down? I think I said almost half the food we store goes to waste anyways because they can't get it sold fast enough. Well, yeah, we have supply chain issues where like the food has to get to like certain places on time so it can be processed properly. And we don't have like the logistics set up to where the food processing facilities are close to the food production facilities. You also have the fact that like a lot of independent farms are shut down, and so what is it, like one company owns almost all of like the food production in the US now? Some crazy thing like that. I can't remember, but like we have an abundance of oil to make fuel, but they run the supply out. I think they run the supply out, but I think they also screwed up oil processing. So like I think you're right, we have a ton of oil, but they got rid of all of the ways that we could refine it. Isn't there only like one oil refinery left in the US? Or well, I think there's more, but like the rest of them are broken or something. I tackled that way back in like book 7. Like drilling for oil sustainably is important, but having like the refineries at strategic locations is also important. Because if you're going to attack the US, yeah, taking the grid down would be annoying, but like taking out the refineries would be just as bad if you were, you know, a bad foreign actor. If we can't refine oil here, like we're screwed. I mean, regulations are getting forcing them to close. Yeah, I thought. Oh, well, I think we're like getting another pipeline. They like approved another pipeline again. Finally. But I don't know if we're building any more refineries. And yeah, like manufacturing, we have the factories, but like being able to like produce our own steel like at cost is impossible now. Again, we had almost all this squared away with 45, and then 46 came around and sent us back like 20 years. Everyone complains about him, but like that was probably the most prosperous time our country's been in ages. So I don't see us getting back to that. I mean, who knows? Like maybe we'll get one more shot in the arm, maybe we'll get one more, you know, opportunity at this where we get a president that like turns all the pipelines back on, gets all the refineries back going, starts processing our own steel again, like incentivizes domestic food production, somehow gets the interest rates back down. But like the thing is, like there's still tons of people that don't want to go back to work. They don't want to work. And they don't want to pay taxes, which I get. I mean, the money is just being completely wasted. But like we're borrowing what, like $1 trillion every couple weeks or something like that, because there's no borrowing cap now, which means like the treasury notes just have to keep going up, which means our interest rates have to keep going up to like offset shorter and shorter treasury bonds. Like, that's not sustainable. And they're like, well, we actually should have raised interest rates twice last time, but we promise we're probably only going to raise interest rates this one last time. It's like, dude, interest rates are going to be going up for a long time. And I thought to myself, buying the house now is kind of a win-win, because interest rates are horrible right now compared to what they were, but the Fed could easily like double interest rates and just completely crash the economy, in which case I'll be happy that what they are now. But if the interest rates go the other way and they go down, then I can just refinance. So I didn't buy at the top of the housing crisis, and I hopefully did not buy in at the top of interest rates. But if I did, I can just refinance. And I can grow my own food soon to offset that. I had originally thought that these owners left me a bunch of dirt, but really what they did was they just got somebody to just spray dirt around the house, which kind of made just a big mess. So I thought I was going to have a bunch of like farmable dirt, but I didn't. But hopefully here in a week or two, I'll get my raised beds here with all of my dirt that I've been saving for years. Because I know it sounds stupid, but like I have my own dirt. I have my own dirt because dirt prices were going up a couple years ago. And so I bought tons of dirt and like put it aside. Because at my last house, they shaved all of the good dirt when they built the place, so then they took it. And people had been parking their cars on it and like leaking oil into it, and the dirt was ruined. I learned my lesson. So chat says, the only thing that can save this country is by crashing and burning, because no digital money will work. Every nation that grew this powerful is fucked up because they just make fake currency. Yeah. I think I kind of sort of disagree a little bit. I think their digital currency could work if it's based off the price of food, because food, they've tried to force everybody into the cities where they know they can't grow anything unless you're super technical and careful about it. And you know, where you can like, you know, vertically grow aquaponics or whatever, micronutrients and stuff. Like, I think they could base a central currency off, or I mean a digital currency off food and rent. But here's the problem. If the cities crash and burn, China's going to buy up everybody's real estate, all the commercial real estate, and then you'll be having to pay for 15-minute commie holes. Won't work. Yeah, they'll work. They just won't work. They'll work in the commie way that commie things are intended to work, which is like control and depopulation. Like, if you were going to depopulate a country, how would you do that? You would force everybody into the cities, you'd wall them off, and then you would starve them, right? Sort of like some kind of camp that they have to stay in and be and concentrate really hard about their life choices. So I know it won't work in the way of things getting better, but if you think about it in the way of things getting worse, and you put on your commie hat for a second, you would see that it actually makes perfect sense. You just have to put your commie hat on. And you could lock people down in 15-minute cities and have mass transit be the only way to get between them. The problem with people in large groups, they become ugly and stupid. Yeah, so I agree, but here's the thing with that. I think how they have that factored in is by fentanyl. So the cities can become unruly, but in the city the other day, so it's not illegal in some cities to own professional pill presses, like commercial, like humongous pill presses. And so they ship in the fentanyl, which is really, 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 really small compared to them shipping other drugs. And they seized the other day enough fentanyl powder to make 138,000 fentanyl pills, which is their highest haul to date. And keep in mind, I think like 1 in 5 of these pills has over like the lethal limit, and that's the highest haul they've got, but they've gotten hauls that are almost that high before. So I think that they could keep a city relatively either not docile, but like between them letting out the prisons, which they're doing, they're letting another prison, they're closing another prison here in any time now, and I think they're just going to let them out. I'm sure most of them are fine, but it's like it only takes one to be a serial killer. So I think like between letting the prisons out and then just like coating cities in fentanyl and trank, and there's already another fentanyl coming out that they're saying is not mixed with trank, that is like twice as concentrated or something. Yeah, it's one thing to make them docile, but it's worse when they make them believe it's normal. Absolutely. And that's the thing. You can control the population no matter how ugly they get by starving them and releasing fentanyl in prisoners and gangs on them. Like, it makes Escape from New York and Escape from LA and the Purge movies look tame in comparison. And I know it's like really cliche to say people really don't get it, but like it looks okay during the day, and they still have all their useful idiots posting pictures of 6 a.m. going, see, everything's fine here. It's like, yeah, because everyone's dead from the night before, and the ones who happen to survive haven't crawled out of their tents. And there's so many things that go on there that I don't even want to say, because they're just unspeakable horror and atrocities. And it has become completely normalized. But then someone says a bad thing and points at somebody wrong, and that person gets 5 years in jail or 10 years in jail. And then they'll all sit and clap and cheer. It's like literally 1984. It is literally 1984. And they'll take out, a conservative that's maybe, lost their way because they got in with the wrong crowd. They'll go throw them in jail for 5 or 10 years. But like, there was a dude that like fought his way into the courthouse and almost killed a U.S. Marshal or whatever. And like, AMR wasn't there to save him. They had to drive him to the hospital themselves. Like, his own backup, I don't even know where his own backup was. And things like this, like, don't even make the news. Because, I mean, they don't want to... They want to act like they still have some control over the city. And, yeah, they try to stifle the videos and the news reports of this because they can just make it so the search engines never pop them up and try to throw the people that talk about it in the gulag or, shadow ban them or completely ban them. I mean, goodness forbid if I ever, if people ever actually watched this channel, the channel would probably be gone because someone would just report it and get it censored and gone. But I'm a small enough channel to where I can at least talk to a few people. By being, well, I know. Well, I've talked about this a million times, like, the vast majority of conservatives are so lazy and complacent that they will throw each other under the bus just to last another day. And they'll be like, well, that's my line in the sand. This is my line in the sand. And they never just stand with each other. And then the other conservatives are either like easily swayed, or confused by like psyops, and they get manipulated and corrupted. And it's really sad. You can try to help. You can lead a conservative to water, but you can't make them drink from the water. And like, warrior culture was like coming back for a while, and it's mostly gone again now because anybody who stood up and tried to defend themselves got hung out to dry. And I think also conservatives do themselves a disservice by not trying to take care of each other. Like, I've said this before, like, it's admirable to want to raise kids and, want to work on your farm and homestead and stuff and try to be ready. But like, there has to be equal amounts of trying to outreach and keep your group together. And I struggle with that too, because like, people just slowly drift away and they just like slowly stop communicating. And you can have like, a lot of really tight-knit friends that you've been really tight with for a long time, and then they kind of just stop communicating. They just stop responding, and it's usually because they've drifted to another crowd. And sort of like, I don't have kids, but like, if you have kids and all of a sudden they start hanging out with a different group of friends, as a parent, it's got to be like really stressful because it's like, oh, they're hanging out with a different group of friends. Like, you don't know if they're good or bad. And I've been told a million times, like, it's not my responsibility. But I think if conservatives, not that they have to be like self-policing, because I think that I forgot what the lefty loos call it. What do they call it? Being protester police or something like that. Basically, like, don't narc on your own side and, break the whole black bloc thing. They call them like protest police or something. Not that you've got to like, oh, that conservative doesn't have a trigger that I like. you know, all that like bullshit petty. They don't use a water filter that I like, you know. But at the same time, if they've fallen in with like a bad crowd that's like clearly been, is a psyop, or they've been manipulated in some way by the glowies, or just by another group, like it's one thing to like make sure you're not, torpedoing other groups just because they're doing something you don't like. But at the same time, I mean, there's still like a lot of groups that just exist to just shit on other groups. And so when your friends just like start disappearing, you've got to be able to tell the difference between like, well, did my friend get black bagged? Or is he just like checking out another group and deciding to not talk? Or did he decide to focus more on his kid and his family? I had a lot of friends that like decided to focus on their kids or their family, and it's like, or a business. And it's like, well, if you tell everybody that, that's great. But if you don't tell anybody that, how do we know you didn't get like black bagged and you're not off in a fucking gulag somewhere? Or not doing something that's going to like blow back on everybody else? I mean, we in chat here, we've had friends that have just gone off the radar. And it's like, are they suffering from like a deep depression? Like, do they need a battle buddy to call them? Or did they get black bagged? Or did they join the other side? Or are they deciding to be a CrossFitter all of a sudden? Like, are they back in the dating game? And so it's really hard, even like, you don't want to be a part of the uniparty, and I'm certainly not. But yeah, the fake liberals push the policy that destroys more and helps conservatives talk about a good policy but never pull the plug to enact it. That's because they make everything that isn't ultra far left seem extreme, which just scares conservatives too much to do anything about it, because they don't want to come off as extreme, not realizing that no matter what you do, it's going to come off as extreme. Being Christian's extreme. Having a garden's extreme. Having a well is extreme. They try to, it's called like othering people. They, you don't want to live in the city, you're extreme. You don't want to live in a suburban area, you're extreme. Why do you live away from the bus line? You're extreme, because they don't trust you anymore. They, like, everything has gone like pure tribalism. But if everybody would just keep communicating, which they don't want us to do, everything will be fine. Yeah, the answer is to little to no policy. I completely agree. And I want to talk about like, being like a free speech absolutist versus, and being like a pro Second Amendment, like absolutist. I want to talk about that for a second. Like, and I said this in my last video, the First Amendment doesn't protect you against free speech from other people, and that's how we've had the last 8+ years of just massive civil unrest, because if you get enough big enough group together, you can stifle somebody's free speech. And how you defend against that is the Second Amendment, obviously. Well, it's there. They keep trying to rewrite. Speaking of like the stroke of a pen, they keep trying to rewrite the Second Amendment over and over and over and over and over and over and over, instead of just following the original intent. And so now, I don't know how much you follow this news, but they're talking about, instead of like a pistol or a rifle being in common use, whatever the hell that means. It just means like legally owning it and not using it for illegal things, because they're trying to like redefine common use of a firearm as actually firing the firearm. And it's so insane because it's like, you don't have to fire a firearm for it to be an effective self-defense tool, you know. Just everyone carrying firearms around and being well trained is a deterrent. And so that in and of itself should qualify for common use, even though a lot of people say, well, the Second Amendment's not for self-defense. Although I think that's hyperbolic. I mean, at its core, it is. I think maybe people confuse that with home defense, but I think that's a real concrete way of explaining, you know, for personal defense against things that are going to be a challenge. And a lot of people say, well, that shouldn't involve nukes, that shouldn't involve battleships, that should involve, like, yeah, exactly. And so, like, I think saying it's for defense, it's you know, I think, you know, if you join an army, then that would be like for offense. But if you're a civilian, it would be for defense. I just don't see why that's controversial. But again, that's more, I know, that's just more like conservative stupidity. Like, no, I can say that firearms are for defense. I can say the Second Amendment's for defense. I don't think it's for offense. I think the military, you know, in Congress deciding to wage war on another country, that would be like an offense thing. I think as a citizen, not that you have a duty to retreat, but you're not a police officer. You don't have a duty to jump into a firefight, you know. Like what, Uvalde, where he just like sat and the kids just died, or whatever. The military should have never existed. I know. I think you should have a foreign policy, and I think that if there's an army mounting up at your border, I think it would make sense to mobilize, get the mobile infantry together, and service equals citizenship. The bugs are mounting on our borders. We need, you know, some kind of military. Because if you don't have a military, but you're going up against an invader that actually has an active trained military, you're just going to get wiped off the map, or at least like sever. You're going to have heavy losses. I can't think of the right word right now. Suffer heavy losses. But like, service equals citizenship. Are you doing your part? And I know that's kind of like, I'm not a libertarian, and I've gotten in arguments with a lot of libertarians about that. I think that would be the only time that not that you need a military industrial complex, but you'd need some kind of, you know, general, corporal, lieutenant. You'd need some kind of like military command and structure, because you're going to have to mount a coordinated defense that actually makes sense. And I don't think that's covered in the Second Amendment. I think, you know, you have to have military strategists if you're going to, and you have to have rank and structure if you're going to have a successful military campaign. But I think that should be completely independent from like the military industrial complex and the arms lords that just sell weapons to both sides and then force you to go into debt to buy like the latest and greatest because the assholes are like selling to both but not really enough to wipe anybody out. And then you end up with like horrible shit like biological weapons and chemical weapons. And then you force both sides to buy hazmat suits, and then everybody gets sick from Agent Orange and burn pits and all the horrible stuff that's happened to like vets from them being exposed to chemicals and radiation. And it's so weird, right? Like outsourcing weapons it's complicated, right? Because of ITAR and stuff, like we're not supposed to be sharing our weapons with other countries, and we're not supposed to be selling our weapons to other countries. But I can't remember if it's like Congress or who it is. They can just decide on a whim to sell our weapons to other countries, or just give our weapons away to other countries. And there's so much corruption, the weapons just end up everywhere, or we just leave them there. And I think if we were going to create our own weapons to like employ our own people, then we shouldn't be trading and selling our weapons. Like ITAR, the whole point of ITAR was that like so our weapons systems and documentation and blueprints never left the country. But now we can't even build half of our stuff without silicone from a country we could be very easily going to war with. And it's just like, that's a bad strategy. And then the fact trying to like trade missiles and weapon systems and tanks and stuff with other countries, it's like, no, it sucks, but like sooner or later, if a country is not strong enough, you can't just like feed them weapons forever, weapon systems forever. Like, unfortunately, if one country is stronger than another country, the way of the universe is that the bigger country takes out the smaller country. It doesn't make sense to throw away tons of money and weapons away for like a little country that can't defend itself. If it has a strategic importance, then I still think it's better to have that country be neutral. Whether we're talking about like Ukraine or Jerusalem or Panama, I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. The Gulf of Aden, like all those like strategic places. Instead of one country owning them, that could just fuck the other country. It would just make way more sense to have them be neutral. And just have neutral countries that no other country can occupy. Like, wouldn't it be better if just like no country owned Panama? Not that it should be a lawless shithole, but like fighting over Panama would be ridiculous. But like those are the sorts of situations that we could be thrown into. Same thing with Ukraine, same thing with Taiwan. Like, wouldn't it make sense for Taiwan to just be a neutral country and not be owned by anybody? Probably the same thing with Hong Kong. Like, just have it be neutral. How many wars How many wars could be avoided by having strategically important countries just be neutral? And then have strategically defense-oriented borders. Where it's like, well, they don't, this is our mountain range, you're not getting past it. This is our river, you're not getting past it. And then everything outside of it is just neutral. Once you have cultural revolution, you have to finish the job. I mean, you're right. And that's exactly what happened. One country is always going to want this strategically advantageous land around it. But they're never going to stop. They're always going to want more. They're always going to need more resources. And I don't know, going back to the Second Amendment stuff, like, there's just all these little towns that always get stuck in the middle. And they get sacrificed, and their people just have horrible things happen to them. And, if you arm and train your town, they can at least fight. I mean, would a military go try to take, like, a small town if they were going to fight to the very, very last person and it had essentially infinite ammunition and food? No, the military is probably going to go around that town, and that town is probably going to be fine. Because they're like, we're not going to go into that town. They're going to fight until the last man, woman, and child. And we're going to burn up our trained military assets trying to take this little podunk town, And if the whole world was like that, which is more of like a tribal structure, and then you have like the two towns trying to defend each other, only the NPCs would march into towns to take it by force, and they would be dead. They would be dead NPCs, because I mean, imagine being like a trained military and be like, well, we could go fight that military base over there and just pound it with ammunition, or pound it with munitions, or we could go try to take this small town over here, and every single one of them is armed. Like, let's go attack the military base. But there's like women in that town over there, and they're like, yeah, and every single one of them has a fucking sniper rifle, and they're like, all right, never mind, we don't need it that bad. We'll just go over here. So I think that's it for now. I've been rambling for a while. I think I'll do a part 2 later, after I remember what the rest of my topic. I think it was going to be like nukes or something. Should civilians be able to have nukes? Which is, of course they should. Sent their boys to be in the military. Well, I know. There's a lot of like Roman conscripts and child soldiers and stuff, but your town could just say no to child soldiers if everybody's armed. Like, no, our entire town's armed. We're not sending any of our kids to go fight. That's how it happens in Africa. They come and take all the boys. And if the whole town was armed, they could just say no. It's probably not. People probably know. I think we're going to be living in a time soon where they realize that hydrogen's not going to work, and they realize that batteries aren't going to work, and they're going to have nukes in cars and stuff. And after we have nukes in cars, may as well just let everyone have depleted uranium bullets and nuclear weapons. I mean, would you go attack a town? Would you go attack a town if you knew that they had like shoulder-fired nuclear warheads? Dude, hell no. Hell no you wouldn't. Hell no. Are you kidding? You know, like, Commander, we need to go take that town over there. They have a bunch of women and water. And they're like, oh, hold on, let me scan their defenses. Oh, no, they've got 20 shoulder-fired nuclear warheads. We're not gonna attack over there. We're gonna go this way instead. Okay, thank you. But sir, they have women. No, shut up. We're not going over there. They will melt our tank column. We'll go find somewhere else. Like, I mean, it's really that simple. I mean, it sounds a little bit, it sounds a little like chaotic and, anarchy, but like, really it's just about being left alone. I mean, it's the same thing with like anti-aircraft or like SAMs. I mean, you're tired of like drones flying in your sovereign space around your town. You're just like, all right, well, we warned them. We're sick of those drones flying. We're just gonna start dropping drones until eventually people stop flying drones around here. Got them. I mean, I don't know, like, everyone would learn to respect each other like really fast. And there's downsides, but you'd end up with like a real respectful set of colonies. I think we have a long way to the standard society. In many ways, people will adapt to whatever works. Easy to. Yeah, I think we have a long way to go too, because people are just working more and more jobs, and they're just cramming more and more and more people in each house, which is one of the reasons why I wanted property, because, like I've said before, every house had an RV in front of it, a tiny home in the back, and a converted garage. And every subdivision was turning into a tiny town. And so I think in the US a lot more than Europe, I think we're suited to survive a lot longer, just because we can adapt, and we have land and resources, and we can just keep adapting and trading. And we have, somewhat of a multiple kind of parallel economies in place. But people have to be thinking ahead enough to not lose their houses. Everybody has to band together to keep the houses that they have, and not be like, no, we're just not going to get roommates. Like, everybody's going to have 2, 3, 4 roommates, and it's going to be more advantageous to grow food than it's going to be to work. And I think we're going to end up with more of a farming culture again, where people are going to be jobless, but they're going to live somewhere where they can grow food. And their full-time job is going to be on a homestead growing food and preserving food. And I think in the US, we are good at adapting to that. It's going to be painful, and unfortunately we lost an entire generation that was really good at that. But we have the internet now, and we can find our way again. So I don't think it'll be a full collapse. I don't think I ever thought it was going to be a full collapse. But the cities are like mid collapse right now. and forcing everybody to come back in the office, which they're still trying to do, is simply not going to work. And the cities are going to fall. They are falling. Like, they're still trying to paint off the cities as not being bad. The cities are very, very, very bad. And unfortunately, people still don't want to, like, take care of each other. So if someone's in the city, someone else doesn't really want to take care of them while they're there. And then so the cities are going to fall. And I think those of us that grew up, understanding this was always going to be an eventuality, realize you don't really need a job. You just need food. So they're going to be forcing the people in the cities, I think, to switch to digital currency just for food and shelter. But they just give tents away now. They give tents away, and then you go to the different places to just get your free food, and then they just do drugs the rest of the day. Whereas in rural areas, everybody has resources. We have land and seeds and plants and jars and tractors and cows. There's cows everywhere. There was like a goat eating all the grass in a ditch, and it's like, why is there a goat eating all the grass in the ditch? And there's freaking deer everywhere, whether you want them to or not. Whereas the cities can only sustain themselves off the taxes and the food, the agriculture, and the workers. Yeah, stay inside. You tell them to stay inside, and they're like, stay inside of my 40 acres? Stay inside of my 100 acres? Stay... Or are you telling me to not go in the city, which is fine, because I don't want to go in the city anyway. Like, stay inside? You mean I don't have to come in the city anymore? Like, yeah. It's hilarious. So, dumb bitch quit her job. Oh, that's right. I remember you told me that. That's so awesome. Yeah. Well, because people just won't do it. Plus, you're telling people to stay inside that live in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, stay inside of what? And they stay in their giant building. They keep signing shit. But it's like, what are you gonna do? Come out here? Like, them signing things doesn't mean anything to anybody here. A lot of these people are almost completely off grid, or they're very close to working themselves to being off grid. Like, what are you gonna do to them? Shut off their power? It doesn't matter. What are you gonna do? Shut off their water? They're on wells. What are you gonna do? Like, burn them out? Like, there's no fires near here. You can't flood us out because we're not living in a floodplain. Are you gonna send a mob here? They'll get frickin' stacked like lumber. And so I think, hell yeah. I know. It's just, well, yeah, with shotguns, I think there's going to be a resurgence of shotgun purchases. And I've said this a lot, every single shortage there's always been birdshot available. Always, always, always. And birdshot is such a useful round. Or trap shot. AR shotgun. Dude, yeah, they had those like Mossbergs with like those quad stack mags. Oh, I wanted one of those so bad. It's a good thing I didn't just go on a bender buying every gun that I wanted. But those mag fed Mossbergs were just sick. I think they're banned now here. But they were dirt cheap too. I feel like an idiot. I think I was thinking that there's no way I'd be able to carry it around because the mags were huge. The mags were like giant bricks, and I know they would have weighed a ton. Because if you've ever like filled up a bandolier with shotgun shells, it's like 20 or 30 pounds. Shotgun shells are so heavy. And so I'm like, this would be cool. And just absolutely devastating. Like, you want to talk about like devastating? If they ever made like a belt-fed machine gun shotgun. If they ever made a belt-fed shotgun with like giant drum, like ammo can mags, that would be like the most lethal thing on the planet. But that's the problem. Shotgun shells weigh a ton. There is so much lead. There is so much lead in a freaking shotgun shell. But dude, imagine going back in time. So like the Revolutionary War, no, the Civil War. Yeah, going back, well, or the Revolutionary War with like a belt-fed shotgun. Oh my gosh. Even like Vietnam with like a belt-fed shotgun. It'd be over. Nope, everyone would be like, never mind. We don't know what that thing is, but like, could you just put it away? The red coats are like over there, and you're like, go, 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 go. Just like, it's like having like a claymore, like just shooting a claymore over and over and over again. If they could see us now with the weapons, they would fail. Well, they would, but the war would last like 5 minutes. And then we'd be the ones getting taxes on Britain. Go, 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 go. Yeah, I gotta go too, but that was fun. And there'll be a part 2 later. I can't remember what the other thing was I was going to talk about, but I'll think about it later. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Bunker Codes podcast. I hope you found our time valuable. Please exit safely and conduct yourself responsibly. Until we talk again, have a nice day.